أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Dear respected Sadr Majlis Ansarullah, my dear respected elders and Khudam Atfal who are here, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Originally, I was due to give a speech to the Ansar Ijtema 2 years ago. However, at that time, Hazur was preparing for his forthcoming tour to Canada. And so he called me for some work in preparation for that tour. And he asked me to offer my apologies to the Ansar Ijtema. At the time, I have to admit, I was a little relieved because I am neither a confident speaker and nor am I a Nasir. 2 years on, I'm still neither a confident speaker and neither am I a Nasir. But anyway, today I will try my best to speak to you about some of the blessings of Khilafat that I've witnessed over the past decade or so. Before doing so, I do also wish to say that it's a privilege for me and an honor for me to speak to you all. You are all my elders and people, many of you who I've seen since childhood and I've personally learned from and observed. And apart from this, although I'm still a member of Majlis Khudam al-Ahmadiyya, I have a personal bond with Majlis Ansarullah for one reason, and that is that my father, the late Dr. Hamid Khan, who I know some of you knew personally, was appointed Naib Sadr Majlis Ansarullah in the late 1990s. At that time, he was quite seriously unwell. Yet in spite of that, I will never forget the look on his face when he received a call from the Sadr Majlis Ansarullah, who I believe at the time was our current Amir Saab, Rafiq Hayat Saab. My father was genuinely stunned that he'd been given this duty, national duty to serve. And thereafter, seeing how he tried to serve and fulfill his duties to the best of his abilities, despite his illness, was a real lesson for me. It also emphasized at a young age the importance of the different auxiliary organizations, and also showed me that if we are given any responsibility, we should treat it as a privilege and ensure that we work selflessly and with humility. Of course, the person who is our true role model and the person who works and serves day and night for the sake of the Jamaat and for the sake of fulfilling the mission of Hazrat Masih Maud alayhi salam is Hazrat Khalifatul Masih. Certainly, to have served under Hazur, to see how he lives, and to have traveled to different countries with him has been the greatest privilege and honor of my life, both here in the United Kingdom and in the farthest parts of the world. I've had the opportunity to see how Hazrat Khalifatul Masih brings instant comfort and relief, not only to Ahmadis, but also to non-Ahmadis and non-Muslims across the world. I've seen with my own eyes, I've heard with my own ears, how every moment of Hazur's life is spent in the service and defense of Islam, in the service of the Jamaat, and in the service of humanity. And in light of this, I shall present a few incidents which, inshallah, I hope will be of interest to all of you. One thing I have always observed is that Hazur does not make any single decision, no matter how small, no matter how big, without prayer. Hazur's trust in Allah the Almighty is complete and total. In fact, once Hazur told me himself, and I'll quote, "There is no decision I make without first seeking the help of Allah the Almighty. I often take my time making a decision because I will be engaged in prayer, asking Allah to help me make whatever is the best decision for the sake of the Jamaat or whatever I am praying for. Then, once I have made that decision, I never look back. I never fret or change my decision, because I know that that decision has been made after a great deal of prayer. To give one example of how Huzur does not take any step until he feels reassured after dua, I recall Huzur's tour to America in 2012. Prior to Huzur's arrival in America, the United States Jamaat had spent a lot of time engaging politicians and dignitaries so that meetings with Huzur could be arranged throughout the tour. After a great deal of effort, the United States Jamaat even arranged a meeting with President Barack Obama in the White House for Huzur. The USA Jamaat members were genuinely excited by this, very delighted to have arranged this meeting, and they were sure it would prove very historic. I remember they told me before the tour as well, and I also was of the view that inshallah this would be a great highlight of the tour. However, when Huzur was informed of the meeting, much to the surprise of all of us, Huzur instructed that the meeting should be cancelled. When our Jamaat representatives in America, who had been dealing with the White House for many months to arrange this meeting, then phoned President Obama's office to cancel the meeting, the staff member who took the call was completely shocked. He said, "You have been yourselves asking for this meeting for a long time. Now you are cancelling it." He added that I've never heard anybody cancel a meeting with the president before. However, we Ahmadi Muslims, we only have one task, which of course is to listen and to obey. And so our Ahmadi, who was representing the Jamaat, did not feel intimidated, and he repeated his request that this meeting should be withdrawn. Some weeks later, after the America tour had concluded, I asked Huzur why he had not approved that meeting. In reply, Huzur said, "I prayed a great deal, and having done so, I did not consider it to be the right time for this meeting. I was not satisfied that it was in the interests of the Jamaat long term. In fact, it could have caused problems for our Ahmadi Muslims in Pakistan. And my main focus for that tour was the tarbiyat of our Ahmadi Muslims in the United States." Just think about this. Whereas other leaders thrive on publicity and to show their strength and their power, our Khalifa does not care at all for such things. And if Huzur does ever meet world leaders or the media or other influential people, it is only because of his responsibilities as Khalifatul Masih, not due to any personal desire. Huzur will never take any step that he does not think is in the interest of the Jamaat, no matter what. Another incident I wish to relate shows Huzur's absolute power of trust in the power of prayer. In 2015, Huzur visited Japan. It was a brief visit, just a week, but at the same time very blessed. Huzur inaugurated the Beit al-Ahad Mosque in Nagoya, and he also addressed some receptions. Whilst we were in Japan, Huzur held a meeting with the Japan's National Amla members. And during this meeting, an Amla member asked Huzur about conflicts that sometimes arise within the Jamaat. He said that he had observed, even within the Amla setting, that people sometimes had petty quarrels or personal disputes, or they felt that the other person was being unjust to them. And so he asked Huzur, how should we settle such matters? I will never forget the beauty of Huzur's response. Hazur said that in such situations, it is imperative that a person, even if he thinks he is in the wrong, shows humility, patience, and puts their full trust in Allah the Almighty. Hazur said, whenever a person faces trouble or feels the victim of injustice, he should bow down before his Lord, seeking his help. When a person remains silent and patient in the face of injustice, then Allah the Almighty speaks on his behalf and defends him. Always show love to your Ahmadi brothers and sisters, no matter what the circumstances are, and place your trust in Allah the Almighty. When Hazur said these words, I looked around the office, and almost to a man, every Amla member had tears in their eyes. It was an extremely emotional moment which reflected the complete trust in Allah the Almighty that Khalifatul Masih possesses, and this is what he wishes to inculcate amongst all of us. On some occasions, I have even asked Hazur about his life prior to Khilafat. And each time, again, I've learned that Hazur's trust in Allah and reliance on prayer has been a hallmark throughout his life. I once asked Hazur, not long ago actually, about those years when Hazur lived in Ghana in the 70s and 80s. Upon this, Hazur told me an incident which illustrated the simple life that he and his family lived in Ghana and how they fulfilled the true spirit of being a Waqf Zindagi. I saw from Hazur's answer how if he ever required anything at all, Hazur sought the help of Allah rather than place any burden upon the Jamaat. Telling me this story himself, Hazur said, when we lived in Africa, our children were very small and we needed milk for them, but sometimes it was not available and finished before I could proceed to get more. I remember vividly one such occasion. The milk was finished and Sabui, Hazrat Appajan, was worried, but I told her, this is Hazur saying, she was worried, but I told her that we will not ask anyone for help or put any burden upon the Jamaat. Rather, I said we will do istighfar because there are great, great blessings in this prayer, and leave the rest to Allah the Almighty. Hazur continued the story by saying, we continued to pray to Allah and to offer istighfar. And as we did, there was a knock on the door. It was late in the evening. When I opened the door, I saw an Ahmadi teacher who had traveled from hundreds of miles and was on his way to Kumasi. He told me that whilst he was traveling, it suddenly occurred in his mind that we would need some milk for our children. And so he traveled out of his way on extremely poor quality and difficult roads. He gave us a carton of milk, which was sufficient for our children for the next few days. Alhamdulillah. And then he went on his way. All I could say, Hazur said, was Alhamdulillah, that Allah had answered our prayers. Surely this is an example to all of us. Where Hazur always relied upon Allah the Almighty, we also see the way Allah the Almighty fulfilled the needs of his beloved Khadim and had regard for his complete trust in him. I also want to share an incident which shows the mutual love between Ahmadi Muslims and their Khalifa. And having witnessed this love throughout the world, I honestly believe that there is no greater love than this in the world at this time. I met a lady called Ina Saiba. She had come from Indonesia to Japan to meet Hazur. As we were talking, I came to realize that she was the wife of a martyr. You may remember that in Indonesia in 2011, 3 Ahmadi Khuddam were martyred in Indonesia. Extremist Maulvis and the opponents of Ahmadiyyat attacked our mosque and mercilessly targeted the Khuddam who tried to defend it. 3 Khuddam in particular were beaten, pulled onto the streets. They were stripped and pounded until they could take no more. Ina Saiba, the lady who I met, told me that at the time of the attack, she was 5 months pregnant with her first child. It had taken her and her husband 8 years to conceive. She told me that early in the morning, her husband received a call that the mosque was under attack from Ghair Ahmadis. She was worried for her safety, especially the fact that she was heavily pregnant, and she asked her husband not to go to the mosque. But he said, "It is my duty. Our mosque is under attack. I must go there to help." He went there, and it was Allah's will that he was counted amongst those blessed brothers who have given their lives for the sake of Ahmadiyyat. Despite the fact that she had hours earlier urged her husband not to leave her, she told me that when she heard of her husband's martyrdom, instantly she did not feel any panic, fear, or anger. She said, "All I felt was peace and contentment in my heart." 2 days later, a representative of the Jamaat came to see her and said that I have a message for you from Hazur, from London. She said the message he brought was that Hazur is praying for you, and Hazur has also instructed the Jamaat to provide you with a home and regular financial help because you are now the wife of a martyr. Ina Saiba told me how she responded to this, and as she was telling me this, she could not hold back her tears. She said, "I told that representative of the Jamaat, I do not need a house, I do not need any money. All I need are the prayers of my beloved Khalifa, and I am so fortunate that he is praying for me. His love, kindness, and compassion is unparalleled. Due to his grace and his prayers, I know my life will always be blessed, and I know that my unborn child will always be protected." As she said these words to me, she pointed to a little boy who was then age 4, and she said, "This is that boy who at that time was in my stomach." She said, "It is my ardent desire that he should fulfill the wish of his martyred father and grow to become a Marabbi of the Jamaat, inshallah." Anyway, this is the bond of love between the Khalifa Waqt and an Ahmadi that, as I said before, can never be replicated in any other relationship anywhere in the world. Here in the UK, we are so fortunate that Khalifa Waqt is amongst us. We have the great honor and privilege to reside in the same country as him. In so many different countries, I have seen people with tears streaming down their faces because they have had a fleeting glimpse of 10, 15 seconds of Hazur, or perhaps they had a mulaqat of 1 or 2 minutes. At the UK Jalsa, I met a lady from Los Angeles. Her name was Tamina Saiba. As I was talking to her, she began to cry. Tears streamed down her face. I was struck by the message she gave me. She said, "You people who live near Hazur, you have no idea how fortunate you are. You have no idea how lucky you are. Do not ever take this for granted. Your children see Hazur on a daily basis. They pray behind him. Hazur knows their names. What greater blessing could you have than this? Here in London, I have seen how the mosques are filled every day, but it is not the same in every other place. it is very difficult to do the tarbiyat of our children when we are thousands of miles away from our beloved Khalifa. I also met an Ahmadi, Nadeem Bashir Sahib, who's a Waqf-e-Zindagi from Rabwa. He came for Jalsa, and he'd been here for 2 or 3 days when I met him, and so I asked him how he had been spending his days in London. He told me, "Let me tell you something very, very special that occurred in my life and which I will never forget. Yesterday, I was able to pray all 5 prayers behind Khalifa Waqt. How fortunate am I?" He went on and said, "My only desire, my only obligation during this visit is to pray behind Hazur as much as possible, because I do not know if I will ever get this chance again in my life." He said, "I try to come for namaz 1 hour before so that I get to sit in the front row of the mosque, and hopefully Hazur might cast a glance upon me and I can see him from near." Again, we should reflect upon this. Here in the UK, we can pray behind Hazur whenever we like. In fact, this weekend, Hazur has traveled himself so that we can all pray behind him here at the Ijtema. Never take these blessings for granted, just as that lady had warned me. Not long ago, I met an Ahmadi missionary from Pakistan who was now posted in Africa. He told me he had seen firsthand how the African people, Ahmadis, love their Khalifa. He narrated an incident of an 80-year-old African convert. One day, the Jamaat in Africa, in this country, they were holding a meeting, and the Amir Jamaat was addressing the Ahmadis. Amir Sahib told the Jamaat that he would love to invite Hazur to their country in Africa, but he did not think the Jamaat was ready for this. He did not think they were ready to host him, and so it would be better to wait some years before inviting him. Upon hearing this, the 80-year-old African Ahmadi stood up. He was furious and upset. He told the Amir Jamaat, "You have inflicted a great cruelty and injustice upon us by not inviting Hazur because you think we are not ready. Do you not know that our greatest development, our progress, and our tarbiyat can only happen when Khalifa Waqt is amongst us? Our progress is dependent upon being near him and being attached to him." He said, "I do not know if I will ever get the chance to see him again in my life." Hazur's focus, moving on, is always on the well-being of the Jamaat. I've seen this time and time again. Even when Hazur is somewhere else, his heart is with the Ahmadis at all times. In Canada in 2016, whilst meeting the Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and other leading dignitaries, I was present when Hazur remarked to a politician, "Today is not a long day for me in terms of hours. In fact, my normal days are much longer. But it is long for one reason, and that is because today I'm away from my Ahmadis. Today I am away from the masjid, and I'm missing them all." Over the years, I have also seen time and time again how Hazur puts aside all his personal needs and his family life for the sake of the Jamaat. Hardly does Hazur get any time to spend with his family. Hardly ever, if ever, does Hazur get a break. Just a few weeks ago in Germany, a non-Muslim asked Hazur, "Your Holiness, I have seen your routine during these days of Jalsa Salana, and no doubt it is unbelievable and non-stop. Can you tell me what your normal day is like when it is not Jalsa?" In reply, Hazur said, "My every day is like a Jalsa. This is my normal routine, no matter whether I'm in Germany, London, or anywhere else. I do not have weekends, I do not have holidays." Upon this, another guest who was present asked, "Your Holiness, why were you the one chosen for this task as Khalifa? In response, Hazur very humbly smiled and remarked, "You know that this is a real dilemma which till this day I have not been able to solve." Hazur's comment was a reflection of his utter humility and grace. Yet, every sincere Ahmadi in this Jamaat is a witness to the fact that Hazur's personality is one of love, grace, kindness. At every moment, the world is looking towards him. We look not only at the way Hazur talks, at what he says, but we look at how he walks, we look at how he prays, we look at how he eats, how he smiles. There is not a single facet of Hazur's life that we do not pay attention to. Yet we have never once seen Hazur's moral standards fail. We have never seen Hazur do anything that is not in keeping with the teachings of Islam. Where Hazur said that he does not seek rest or holidays, this too is a reflection of his love for us and for the Jamaat. I'm sure I speak on behalf of all MDs when I say that we would be pleased if Hazur sometimes took a few hours or a few days for some rest. Yet because there are Ahmadis who want to meet him, because there are pressing Jamaat matters, because he is receiving thousands of letters every single day, Hazur does not want to waste even a single moment. The time is short, and so I'm just going to end by a short passage which I'm sure most of you will certainly have heard before. Certainly, if there is anything I have learned over the past 10, 12 years, is that we can never, as I've said a couple of times in this speech, comprehend how much our Khalifa loves us. And in this regard, I will take us back to that Friday sermon Hazur delivered in Germany in 2014, when Hazur spoke about his personal relationship with each and every Ahmadi Muslim. Hazur said, "Which other leader is there who keeps a personal connection with each of his citizens?" On the other hand, the Khalifa Waqt maintains a personal connection with Ahmadi Muslims from amongst every race and from all parts of the world. It is Khilafat alone that cares for and feels the pain of every Ahmadi Muslim and prays for them. Hazur said, "Before sleeping at night, there is no country in the world that I do not visit in my imagination, and no Ahmadi for whom I do not pray whilst sleeping and whilst awake." May Allah the Almighty grant Hazur a long and healthy life and enable all of us and our future generations to remain forever attached to this blessed institution and great treasure that is Khilafat-e Ahmadiyya. Jazakallah.